From the Sky News Centre, this is Paul Murray Live.
Thank you very much, Shari. Happy Thursday. Big show ahead tonight. Looking forward to it, so let's get right into it. Tell me who you think the winner and loser of the week is, up on all of our socials. So, we know cost of living, number one issue in the country, and we've got some new data that has absolutely driven this point home about just how much money we are having to spend on the basics. Household spending is up by the best part of 7% in the past 12 months. Now, once they start to break it down on what we are spending extra money on, well, we're cutting back on things like miscellaneous goods. We're trying not to spend our money on health. Of course, we have to spend money on food. But have a look at that, the number one. The number one increase in costs to the households around Australia in the past 12 months is transport, otherwise known as petrol. And is there any plans of the government that claims that they're totally focused on the cost of living and they're going to do any and everything they possibly can to bring down the cost of living by, say, cutting petrol tax that, as you know, they have increased from 23 to 49 cents a litre?
No.
There's no way.
No way.
No.
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 But the same people who are increasing and therefore getting more taxation out of petrol are the ones today trying to tell us, oh, well, this budget, we're definitely going to do even more to take care of you. Now, of course, they have said many times the biggest part of this budget is the too little, too late tax cuts, $14 a week for some people. Maybe $120 a month if you're at the absolute tippy-top end, but still, it ain't going to be enough to touch the sides of, among other things, the increased costs that you and I have for petrol. But here's the Prime Minister just saying something to fill the day.
Helping Australian families and helping small family businesses with their energy bills was a key priority in last year's budget. It helped people under pressure, but it did something else as well. It helped to fight inflation. And as we put together next month's budget, small businesses and families will again be front and centre in our thinking.
Now, we talked in great detail last night about small business, about the many strains and difficulties, including a significant number of people who are going to give up working for themselves because it's just too damn hard. Do you really believe that they've done anything to help you, especially when it comes to power bills? Now, again, the promise was $275 down for households by 2025. Instead, all the way up. And remember, it is not from the highs minus $275, it's from the day they were elected minus $275. But of course, the Prime Minister will not say this promise anymore, but then he also won't confirm that it has been ditched. It's just the modelling has changed because of the war in Ukraine, which had already started before the last election. But of course, this is also the government, when they're talking about, oh, we want to help families and we want to help small businesses and we want to help workers and we're going to do everything about cost of living. They took $1,500 away as an automatic tax return for 10 million people in the country. That's what they did. That's what they decided to do. And they did it last year when people were hurting. But this year, when all the data suggests that people are still hurting, if not a little more in some sections, no plans to cut the petrol tax that they've increased or to give you back the $1,500 automatic tax return that will help you pay for everything that is more than it was this year, let alone compared to where it was when they became the government a couple of years ago. And a perfect example about cost of living and yet another group that are particularly hurting right now. According to a survey, 2/3 of retirees feel less financially secure amid the cost of living crisis. Oh, but nothing to see here, right? Now, that's your money. But what about other people's money? Because we also got some data today out of the people who keep an eye on the expense accounts of our federal politicians. It will not surprise you that they spend money like water. And the bloke who supposedly understands working Australians because I've got a dog called Toto and me mum used to live in a housing commission joint, guess what? He's racked it up well and truly. On international travel, throw in some of his staff, $197,000. This, by the way, was not for a whole year. It was not even for 6 months. It was for January, February and March of last year, when the focus was apparently on cost of living. He spent, well, you spent $6,500 on members of his family to travel with him. You spent $16,000 for him to be driving around in a chauffeur-driven car. You also paid $2,000 for him to use the other car that, of course, he never uses or presumably never uses because you're the Prime Minister and you get driven around in the limo we already pay for, right? Now, despite the fact that he has a house in Sydney, that, of course, is Kirribilli House, a house in Canberra, which is the Lodge, he still charged taxpayers almost $8,000 in travel allowance so he'd be able to stay in hotels around the rest of the country. Total cost in 3 months of the Prime Minister and some of his staff. The actual numbers go way through the roof when we start to look at how much it costs to rent office space and all the rest of it. And we're being kind with this number, $231,246. Oh, but he's done everything he possibly can to deal with cost of living. All that Airbus elbow flying around on Toto 1, while at the same time increasing taxes on petrol, which is, according to the very data that this government gets via the Bureau of Statistics, is the largest expense for Australians and the largest increase in expense in Australians when it comes to their households. He could do something about it, but chooses not to, because he lives in that world now, the world where literally everything from the staplers in his office to where he puts his head at night is paid for by you and I. A bloke who does not care when petrol is $2 or $2.20 or $1.80, because the whole point of increasing the amount of taxation that you get per litre is that the higher the price, the better they go. Now, this is a massive issue for Australians, an easy fix, one that our mate Di Lee's tried to suggest, but no, we can't possibly go there. Now, let's compare $231,000 to Peter Dutton, $46,893. Let's have a look at some of the ministers. Jim Chalmers, about $28,000, but he spent an awful lot of money on a new office fit-out, by the way, because, you know, the Treasurer's office has to be particularly flash. I'll give you these numbers as we go on throughout the week. Annika Wells, who wants you to pay more for care the older you get, well, $23,000 just being her in January, February and March. Best part of $100,000 for Chris Bowen, lots of international travel there. And again, I haven't even included his staff. Claire O'Neill, $66,000, Anne O'Lee, $16,000, which is surprisingly small considering how many times she has to fly from Perth to Canberra to do her job. And how are the government planning to make sure that there's enough money in the coffers, not for you to get $1,500 back automatically as a tax return, because, you know, that would be inflationary, but so they can continue to give themselves the highest pay rises in 10 years, so they can give the public service the highest pay rise in 10 years, so they can give every MP an extra staff member, pushing up the overall numbers that I've just spoken of, and these were just 3 months, the first 3 months of last year. Well, of course, you have to pay. Apparently, the tax office is now going to use sort of robo-debt-style systems to go after anyone who owes them money. The suggestion is that small business in particular, if you have not paid every single dollar you owe, they are going to come chasing you, $33 billion. On the same day, the Prime Minister stands there and says to small business at their annual conference, I'm going to do something for small business. Yeah, he's setting the ATO on you. Now, a feature of politics at the moment, as we know, is moving away from the old choices of Team Red and Team Blue. And there have been, as the years have rolled on, multiple other choices than Team Red, Team Blue. And in the same way that you probably don't drink the same beer or wine that you did a generation ago, well, people are searching for other options out there other than the big two. Now, we already saw at the last election what the effect was when it came to the Teals, and they were so successful that it is virtually not impossible, but improbable, that the Liberal Party at any election anytime soon can get near the 76 seats required to form a majority in the country. So people on the left automatically assume, well, Labor will be fine, right? Maybe not. You see, as I've been talking about for some time, the modern Green is going to try to use rental accommodation as a way of wrapping up all of their other crazy stuff that they say, in the hope that they are going to be able to eat into some of the 30-something% of Australians who rent, let alone left-wing politics and identity politics that goes on top of that. But the Greens think that they can win seats, not off the Libs, but off Labor, because that's who they win their seats off. Remember the last election, Terry Butler, the same-sex marriage advocate, the woman who was woker than woke on Q&A, right in the sweet spot of future Governor-General stuff. Well, of course, she was taken out by a Green. So it didn't matter that she was a woke member of the Labor Party. It didn't matter that she was the environmental spokesperson who was going to cut 43% of 1% of the world's climate emissions. She wasn't good enough, so bang, off she went. Well, now we learn today that there is another target for the Greens, and it is another Labor seat. In fact, it is the seat held by one of the most recent generational heroes of the Labor Party, and that, of course, is Robert James Lee Hawke, Bob Hawke's old seat. The seat of Wills is one that he represented in the federal parliament, of course, as he became a member and Prime Minister. Peter Khalil is the current MP, and guess who's coming for him? The current leader of the Greens in the Victorian State Parliament. She is going to resign a guaranteed position that she would have to run for federal parliament. Now, the margin is 8%. Now, the Greens believe that something is seriously changing in this seat and they think they will be able to win it. Now, I hope that the Liberal Party, when given a chance to preference people, will preference the Labor Party over the Greens in the same way that, again, in the pixie land, I would suggest that in the same way that the Labor Party needs protection from the Greens, the Liberal Party needs a buffer against the Teals. So until the major parties actually start preferencing each other before you start getting to the biggest statistical threats to their seats, more Teals, more Greens will end up flowing into the parliament. And as long as you think, oh, the pain's on the other side, but here's the reality. The Greens are coming for Labor seats. Labor has 78 seats in the federal parliament. They need 76 to have a majority. The polls out of Western Australia show us clearly that they are going to lose seats there. They are going to lose seats in other parts of the country, which means they start to push towards minority government. And the idea that a Labor seat is swapped for a Green seat doesn't really matter when you have a majority of the seats. But when it's a minority of seats, it increases the power of people like Adam Bandt to be able to be the tail that wags the dog of the Labor Party after the next election. Meantime, the Greens, of course, today are doing their best to cheer on articles in taxpayer-funded media today suggesting about what the case is for 16-year-olds to be allowed to vote in Australia. Now, I remember being 15 and nerdily interested in politics. I remember being 16 and frustrated that I couldn't take part in elections. 17 the same. But I think if we're actually going to talk about some electoral reform here, OK, you know what, 16-year-olds can have the right to vote, but it's not compulsory until you're 21. You see, the idea here is that if it's compulsory for everyone and if it's compulsory for 16-year-olds to go, then they will follow their mates on TikTok and everything goes further to the left. But I say, if you've got a job, if you're a taxpayer, then OK, you get a right to say on what is going to be happening with your money. But that shouldn't be compulsory until the age of 21. Why do we force anyone in this country to vote, in my view? If you are particularly invested, particularly excited, particularly focused, particularly energetic, then yes, I think there should be a place for you in the democratic process. But the democratic process gets dumbed down and voters increasingly get bought off when we have a system where everyone has to vote. So, OK, let's drop it to 16. Let's free it up for everyone, but if we won't free it up for everyone, let's just make it compulsory from 21 and above. But of course the Greens wouldn't want that, would they? Now, as you know, one of the great narratives that constantly gets thrown around is that the Liberal Party has a problem with women. Well, somebody might want to actually check the polls, because the latest primary vote polling, and it is the only public polling, there we go, that tells us not only primary vote, but also starts to break it down by gender. It shows that women are currently voting by 3% more for the LNP than they are for the ALP. So, of course, it is time to fire up the old machine. Maybe somebody has seen the polls here. The Liberal Party has a problem with women. You know the story.
Seem incapable of recognising that 50% of the population are female and that the Parliament should represent the people.
that the Liberal Party has the lowest number of Liberal women in their parliamentary ranks since 1993.
The Liberal Party is in the middle of a debate about how it recruits and treats women.
Well, the dramatic departure of Julia Bishop from Parliament is being seen this morning as yet another sign the Liberal Party has a problem with women.
The LNP will host its International Women's Day event at a men's-only club in Brisbane. As the Minister for Women, does the Prime Minister think this is right?
You know the drill. You know how it played out last time, and this, of course, is the way that the Labor Party expects, along with the Greens, to be able to get anywhere near minority government, let alone majority government. Somebody who likes to push the narrative, not necessarily push forward the news, is old mate nasty Nikki Saver. I say that because, well, look at her work. Self-admitted liar again. Her own quotes about the way that she practiced things when she was in the press gallery. And she's one of these ones who's sort of connected to the Prime Minister, has the private meetings with him. We learnt that via his diary, which of course was being kept from us for, national security. But anyway, Nikki Saver, a lovey of the left now. And of course, because she's a former Liberal staffer, her understanding of the Liberal Party and the modern Liberal Party is way better than anyone who would actually vote for the Liberal Party right now. Anyway, she writes, the antics of Liberal men will cost the party at the next election. She's already decided what the result of the next election is. Because remember, in previous articles, she says, you can't talk about immigration. That would be wrong and racist. Not allowed to talk about population. Of course, though, you can continue to suggest that the Liberal Party is full of blokes, no women allowed. Nikki says, with fewer than 1 in 3 female coalition MPs across the Australian parliaments, all Australian parliaments, Liberal women oscillate between anger and despair. Somebody who was more than happy to apparently take part in this conversation with Nikki Saver was Karen Andrews, the former Home Affairs Minister, one who, by the way, the Teals are hoping to replace in southeast Queensland. Geez, isn't it magical that she's the one who's quoted in the article that'll be spread around by the Teals, written by the person who's getting meetings with the Prime Minister. Andrews reckons that it's time for men to set their personal ambition aside so the party can broaden its appeal. The coalition is very focused on playing to our base. That's code for us, you. The coalition is very focused on playing to our base, but our base is not large enough to get us re-elected. Well, of course, the base was somewhat part of turning 60-40 yes into 60-40 no, but that doesn't count, does it? She says that there's a need for a change and it has to come from the leadership of the party, the parliamentary party, that's code for Peter Dutton, and the leadership of the party behind the scenes. It's the only way. Now, I may shock a few people here, and I know that I have disagreements at times with my colleagues about this, but I don't have a problem with a quota system that will guarantee that the parliament looks like the people of Australia. I would like to hope that everyone is well qualified and all the rest of it, but yes, I'm fine with any efforts to make sure that there's a greater gender balance in our parliament because it's better for our politics. Oh, sorry, did that shock you, Nikki? Yeah, no, I'm not holding on to the old guard where blokes should run everything, not suggesting that. But what I do love about these people who constantly say it's the Liberal Party and the Liberal Party alone that has a problem with women, and it's the leadership of the Liberal Party that needs to somehow change everything because only the Liberal Party is the one who's got it wrong because the Labor Party's got it right. A couple of facts on the table. Who's the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party? Oh, that's right, it's a woman, Susan Lee. Who's the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party? Oh, that's right, a bloke, Richard Marles. Who's the guy who told Tanya Plibersek, a woman, to get out of the way despite the fact that she was the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party, and rather than her becoming the next leader after Bill Shorten, she had to get out of the way because it was Albo's turn. You notice that's never written about in any of these stories? And we all know why, because it's all about narrative, not news. Again, back to the article here. Bridget Archer, the Tasmanian MP from the seat of Bass, she is quoted inside this article. Now, I've said before, and I will say it again, she should not be challenged at her pre-selection, because when the water was going out of the Liberal Party in 2022, she held a seat. She's the first Tasmanian MP to get re-elected in the seats of Bass and Braddon in a generation. Normally, they're one-termers. So there's something about that part of Tasmania that likes that MP, and that MP, currently wearing a blue jersey, who could have gone and been a teal but never chose to be instead, yes, occasionally upsets people, but in the Liberal Party, apparently it's a broad church and you're allowed to disagree with people. And sometimes I'll disagree with what she has to say, but she's the right person for that seat because she's a winner even when the party at the time was a loser. She says in the article today, we have a choice. We can continue to say the party does not represent me and walk away, or get involved and fight for it. The article concludes, Teals consolidate, Greens advance, Anthony Albanese, who boasts a majority of women in caucus, appoints another accomplished, impressive woman in Samantha Mostyn as the Governor-General. Liberal men elbow out competent women and argue it's not an issue, then rub their noses in their defeats. What started all of this was a factional fight between the right wing of the party and the left wing of the party about who should be number 1 or number 2 on the South Australian Senate seat. They'll both get elected, but that's the problem with women that apparently is the reason to go into this area. Now again, because I'm a bloke, not allowed to say it. I've already said before, I don't mind if for an electoral cycle or 2 electoral cycles there's some better effort to get more women into the parliament, whether that's by quotas or not. Other people who understand the party and its machinery, good luck, right? I think Bridget Archer should stay because she's a winner. She has been returned to that seat at a time when the government lost. She was able to get preferences from Jackie Lambie, and those were necessary to be able to hold on to the seat. If we're talking about the basic electoral maths here, she's somebody to back in here. But then what happens when the Liberal Party does choose a female candidate? How does the media react to the party doing what they demand is the only thing that must be done in order to get more women to vote for the Liberal Party? Oh, that's right. Like the Liberal candidate who was going to go up against Monique Ryan, the future Prime Minister of Australia, remember that court case? Well, the media is now going around and dragging up what happened or didn't happen or should have happened or shouldn't have happened when she was at university. I won't even bore you with the details of it. So the Liberal Party choose a woman who's a renter, they choose a woman who's willing to go up against a Teal and all of the difficulties that that entails. Oh no, but we'll still smear her anyway. It reminds me a little bit of Democrats in the United States who all sort of want to pretend that there's a Republican other than Trump, that if they were the nominee, then they would all suddenly support the Republican Party. Apart from the fact that every person who ends up being the Republican candidate gets smeared by the left-wing media. And rather than just the gender of the Liberal candidates, perhaps the narrative really here is the way that the media will always try to go after the past of somebody who's to the right of centre, whereas somebody to the left of centre, who by their very own admissions was a little bit loose, and I don't know what that word means, around Parliament before he decided to give up the drink. That's the current Treasurer, by the way. No investigation, no conversation, no double-checking, no deep diving, no Canberra-Columboing. Geez, I wonder why. To the good people of Queensland, yet another example about Giggles Miles trying to pull the other one here. Now, Giggles Miles, of course, Stephen Miles, who definitely wasn't laughing about youth crime despite the fact he was asked a question about youth crime and then laughed, has made the decision that he thinks that they should not knock down and rebuild the Gabba for the 2032 Olympic Games. Instead, he believes that there should be some sort of pop-up, temporary-ish stadium that takes like an hour to get to on a bus with no plans for any actual transport for it. That won't be budgeted until after the election. And there's plenty of conversation about whether Brisbane should build something closer to the city, whether there's parks or maybe even the Ekka Showgrounds, whether something should happen. But remember, it was his decision to not knock down and rebuild the Gabba. But we learned via the Australian newspaper a few days ago that Stephen Miles, despite the fact it was his decision not to knock down and rebuild the Gabba, regardless of whether you think that is or isn't a good decision, that is his decision, right? But now they're out there trying to use taxpayers' money to pretend it was the Liberal Party who made the decision. Let me explain. Queensland Labor is spending big to make a political virtue of the 2032 Olympic venues debacle, mounting a social media blitz, trumpeting Premier Stephen Miles, quote, move to put cost of living relief over stadiums. The new ad campaign attacks the Liberal National Party for backing an Olympic stadium. Why? Because the former Lord Mayor Graham Quirk recommended the knockdown and rebuild of the stadium, and he also supported a brand new venue at Victoria Park. Now, why is this particularly interesting? Because the person who was asked to do a review into the venues about what should be knocked down and rebuilt was Graham Quirk, a former Lord Mayor of Brisbane. He is a member of the LNP and was a former LNP mayor for Brisbane. But who asked him to do the review? Oh, that's right, Stephen Miles. So Stephen Miles asks the former Lord Mayor of Brisbane to come back with some ideas about what should be built and not built for the 2032 Games. He disagrees with the person that he asked to answer that question for him, then turns around and spends money trying to tell the voters of Queensland that it was the LNP, not him, who hired the person to do the review that he ultimately disagreed with. This guy, slippery, truly slippery. Often we don't get enough chance at the start of the show to talk about good news, but I really want to do that now, to the beautiful city of Moree. Now, you know that we've been there when it came to our town, and that's where there's been some action when it comes to youth crime of recent weeks and months. But yesterday, there was a great announcement which was made by the National Rugby League. Now, I want to put a little more meat on the bone than I mentioned at the end of last night's show, but this is a fabulous idea. It's led by the great Peter V'landys, the man who's changed rugby league for the better and forever. And his idea is working with Indigenous players to be able to reach out to kids before they take the wrong turn. As they're starting to make the wrong turn, you send them to Sydney, you get them to meet their heroes, and those players end up in a relationship where they keep talking to the kids to make sure that they don't get into trouble. Here is Peter V'landys making the announcement yesterday in Moree.
I heard someone say, will this program be successful? Well, I'm a walking example of how it's successful because I was in a similar situation as a youth, a migrant kid that found it hard to assimilate, and it was rugby league that made me assimilate. It was rugby league through a role model that came down and spoke to me and gave me that inspiration to want to succeed. And so I know firsthand it works, and I could have went down a complete different path.
Good on him. Now, when it comes to the war in Gaza, I don't hear an awful lot about it, but I've got something slightly different to tell you, and it's not about some of the obvious tragedies that take place each and every day. Now, the war in Gaza has a political dimension that is being felt in the United States, and that is that Joe Biden has currently got a whole bunch of people that are turning on him because their belief is that Israel has gone too far. That's the softest version of saying things, but you know the nasty pro-Hamas stuff that's running around right now on TikTok. Nothing to do with the Palestinian people, instead, again, the nastiness of Hamas. Now, after the October 7 attacks, the President of the United States went to Israel to offer support and literally a hug to the Prime Minister of Israel. We know what the military response has been, but the apparent closeness between Biden, not just providing emotional, but also military support as well to go after Hamas. But yes, as a result of that, many thousands of civilians that have died as a result, has seen a very significant chunk of people who Joe Biden needs to vote for him to promise they're not going to vote for him if he continues to do what he has been doing since October the 7th.
But look here, the Israel-Hamas war, look at that approval rating. Less than 50% of Democrats are approving on Joe Biden on the Israel-Hamas war. And more than that, John, these numbers have gotten significantly worse. So this is Democrats' views of Biden on the Israel-Hamas war. Look back in October of 2023. It was 67%. Look where we are today, 48%. That disapprove number, look at that, jumped up from 28% in October of 2023 to 46% now.
Now, this issue is number one for people under the age of 30. Second is abortion. I'll get to that in a second, and I know the subject's quite unpleasant for discussion at this time of night, but it's still some of the politics, not just between, Donald said something crazy and Biden fell over. These are all of the actual things that are swirling around in the system. So again, regardless of your thoughts on any of the people in here, I'm just going to make a wild prediction. We've seen that the Democrats have tried and are going to try to remove Netanyahu as the Prime Minister. The hope that would be is that there will be no further action as has currently been in Gaza. My bold prediction is, the closer we get to the election, and if the numbers stay like this, then you're going to see a dramatic change from Joe Biden. It's not saying what I want, just saying what I predict is going to happen because I can see the political wins. And if a United States president sees throwing an Israeli Prime Minister under the bus or withdrawing military support as a way of guaranteeing that he can continue to be the president again for another 4 years, he'll do it. Now, I showed you last night the latest polls that show that Trump is winning in 6 of the 7 swing states. That would be enough for him to well and truly pass the necessary 270 electoral votes and get 312 and easily be the President of the United States again. However, when you actually have a look at the politics that goes state by state at the moment when it comes to abortion, that actually favours the Democrats. And there have been multiple elections for House seats and changes to their constitutions and a whole bunch of things where even deep red states end up going blue on this particular issue. And I made that point in great detail last night, but I wanted to show you what the great Sean Hannity had to say about exactly the same thing I did.
And Robert, we know what the playbook is. They will demagogue on abortion. Republicans, they better have a good answer. And they also need to understand where the country is. If people were to ask me my personal views, okay, I'm pretty pro-life. If you're asking me politically where a politician needs to be, I would say the Dobbs decision of 15 weeks, that's where the country is. And if Republican politicians don't understand that, then, and they run on that, they're going to get their asses kicked and they're going to lose.
That's the point. Politics is always more complicated than it actually seems. It's never as good as it seems or as bad as it seems, but I always want you to be able to see the data. The data, then we get to the debate. That's next here on Paul Murray Live. Looking forward to it. Who do you think is the winner and loser of the week? You know how to tell us. Jump on the socials. See you in a sec. Well, you've heard all the data, you've heard my views. Now time for a debate. We're going to have a great one here because we've got it all inside the man cave and I'm really looking forward to this. And because Sam Crosby's leaning forward, he's about to make a whole bunch of serious points. How are you, great man?
He's from the Labor Party.
He's
from the Labor Party. What serious points could Sam be making?
Sam knows we have a tradition on this program of me finding the weirdest ways to introduce him as possible, right?
Normally you do that in insipid lefty voice and in hard voice.
He's a Fulbright scholar. He's a man working with Vinnies. He's a very accomplished man, but still, well, that's the way we needle. All right, and of course, Holly Hughes, carryover champ as always, from the...
Why is she the carryover champ?
I'm just saying.
This is bullshit.
Are we allowed to say that?
Probably not, but who cares?
Probably not.
It's after 9.
All right, yeah, if he's going to be abused, he's allowed the odd swear.
Yeah.
All right, just the odd one, all right, please. I don't want to do the meetings tomorrow. Now, let's talk here about interesting story around today, suggesting that, of course, unemployment, which is pretty low at the moment, got a 3 in front of it. Both sides of politics have always celebrated that. But there has been an increase in the number of people that are on the dole. Before we get into the rights and wrongs, Holly, how does that work?
It's interesting, isn't it? But I think one of the problems when you look at what's happening in workplaces, and particularly small businesses, the IR reforms that have gone through have made it more and more difficult and more uncertain for small businesses wanting to employ casuals. So those sorts of work arrangements and flexibility are becoming harder and more insecure. And so therefore, small businesses are less likely to employ people, even though a lot of them are still crying out for staff. I think what was interesting in some of the data, though, was the number of people that have been on welfare now in excess of 5 years or in excess of 10 years. And it shows that any of the programs that have been put forward to try and break long-term welfare dependency aren't working. And that's where, if we've got nearly 800,000 or over 800,000 people in excess of 5 years on welfare, and this many jobs that are still available, well, we've got a bit of a problem.
Yeah, this is my thing, Sam, where again, I understand how disability, I understand how neurodiversity, all of the different things that mean not all job applicants are the same and not all welfare recipients are the same. However, I do have a view that I'm fine to increase the dole, but you're only allowed to be on it for X amount of time because it is a bridge between one job to another. But as somebody who, again, works and sees plenty of people who presumably are applying for all the jobs, all the rest of it here, how do we end up in this scenario where you could be without a job for 5 years or even 10 years? Now, I get it, there are some bludgers, but there are plenty of not bludgers too.
Sure.
So how does this work where we import people all the time, but we've got people who are saying they want to work?
So a big problem between that discrepancy between the unemployment rate and the numbers is the unemployment rate as a figure is pretty hopeless, right? So if you work 1 hour a week, and this has been the case for ever and a day, right? If you work 1 hour a week, so So you're still well and truly eligible for the dole or any other benefits you're on, but 1 hour a week, you are not counted in those numbers.
Yeah, the underemployment rate is huge.
Right,
too.
huge.
Way
huge.
higher than the...
And so that's what's happening. So the single biggest group that we see from a Vinnie's perspective are people that have, literally 2 jobs. They might work Monday, Tuesday at one place, Thursday, Friday another place. They're happy to work Friday and Saturday at somewhere else, but they just can't get, picked up, or they can't get the hours. That's the big thing.
I mentioned this at the start of the show, which is the ease with which the system sort of pays other people's money, right? Prime Minister with $750,000 worth of expenditure. This is not for an entire year. It's not for 6 months. It's for 3 months, okay? Now, we all get it. The Prime Minister's no expectation is that he's going to be, hitching from place to place. But there's a lot of money involved here, including a significant amount of money for travel that was something other than Canberra or Sydney in terms of a place he spent the night. But it's even broader than that, right? If we actually included the operation of offices, right, literally the rent, and I was having a look, some of the Teals, $55,000 for 3 months rent for their electorate offices, plus $10,000 for the staff travel, plus the operating expenses. And again, this is how I spent my day, is that I went through some of the people looking at their office expenses, and you can do the overall number, the summary number, or you can go and have a look at literally every single transaction. And we're being charged for stuff that costs $4.50. I don't know what that is, but the idea that nobody could say, look, with my wage, I'll just pay for it, or the MP's got a couple $100,000, doesn't say, I'll pay for it. I don't know what the $4.50 thing is, but clearly it's not the threshold. It's a bit of a mindset, which is any dollar I can claim, I will claim. Now, of course, it is basically a 24/7 job. It is a massive trade-off on your family. So I'm not going to say that every dollar of this...
spending my Thursday evening with you.
Thank you, my love.
Where else would I want to be?
However, it does seem a little bit rich.
Look, I understand that when people look from the outside and they look at this, running an office, having staff, there is a lot of travel. And the thing to remember with federal parliament is we represent, from the Senate perspective, we represent our own state. So we have not just our own electorate to drive around, we have the whole state. But as a federal parliament, whether you're on a joint standing committee, a House committee or a Senate committee, they do travel to all sorts of different places so that the people in rural and remote have the opportunity to speak to their parliamentarians across the board. So I do understand that it looks like a lot of money, but I can tell you I'm spending a week out in quite remote areas for an NDIS committee. And we do try and sit down and work out how we can do it and jump from one place to the other. Right. And we do the week so that we're not putting more flights in and out. So
we'll go to Dubbo, and then we'll do this at Broken Hill, and then we'll do that at Parks.
That is actually how we do try and work it as committees generally. So I know it's a lot.
But then can I ask?
But it is sometimes... And can I tell you, I have seen come through, because I have to sign off on lots and lots of things that come through my office. When things go to Australia Post, quite often they get broken down into different things.
Right.
So you're not sending 4 letters and it's a $4.50, but the way that the post office processes...
Right, so it's an accounting thing as opposed to...
So, yeah, I think you've got to just be a little bit mindful. And the thing with the offices, and I'm not going to defend anyone, but I inherited an office. Christina Keneally left the Senate.
Lost to us all.
Well, as I said on election night, an election loss with a silver lining. But I actually got her office. Yep. So I didn't choose it. I didn't go and pick it. I didn't do the fit out. None of it's there. But because it was already a lease in that office, I get the phone call, right? Because I didn't have my own office.
Yeah,
for 3
that's
years.
where it is, yeah.
There's an office here, go. So it's not always, and things have changed. You used to be able to, I can tell you, a lot of, I know senators did it, and members with big seats, they'd go, I'm going to move every year or every 2 years to a different part of my electorate or a different part of my state. That actually is very difficult to do now because they do try and enter into longer term leases that are more stable. So
it's just weird that the government doesn't own buildings in 151 locations. The reason, of course, they're going to say we have to rent is because the boundaries change and your office may be in the wrong place, which just happens to advantage everyone for their ability to have...
The boundaries do change. Also, if you're in a large seat, and, you know, some seats are very large. I was in the Central Coast this week, and if you come to live at one end of the Central Coast, you may not put your office an hour and a half away at the other end.
Think of the people representing Kalgoorlie.
Well, Melissa Price has... You look at Bob Catter, Melissa Price, Mark park on. They have to fly around their electorate. It's too big.
I don't think you should ever criticise a politician for travelling unless it's going to the tennis or the cricket or something like that. Fine. You know, because the alternative is that they sit in Canberra and they don't go anywhere, and that's bad for everyone. I do think, though, the business class flights from Sydney to Canberra, from Sydney to Melbourne, it's galling. You know, when you're spending thousands of dollars to fly a 30-minute flight, I don't have any problem with people doing WA flights. Fine. You know what? You're
clearly a flight
5, 6
over
hours,
X
fine.
period of time is this, but the rest of it is just...
No one in corporate Australia is flying Sydney-Canberra business class.
Correct.
No one. Like, that just doesn't happen. That went out in the 80s.
And the other point that's really worth pointing out to everyone here too is that, I just want to try to explain the system with the person that we trust, to explain what's going on, to see the problems in it. But also, a lot of people in the public service, all of these rules apply to them as well, right? So, funnily enough, nobody actually turns around and tells us how much insert government department spent on business class travel between
darling,
here
you
and
need to pay more attention to me at estimates.
Do you actually get right in there?
Oh, I got right into it.
Do they answer or do they go, oh, we don't know, we'll get back to you, and they never do?
There was one, and I'm not going to go on the figures, but it was the Department of Climate Change, Energy and Water, so the hypocrisy was rife, and it was over $100,000 for 3 days in New York for 3 people or something. It was wild. Wow. And it was reported, and those things... do happen, but can I tell you what I would say? We don't get points, right? So we do a lot of travel, we do a lot of flying, we don't get any points.
Yes.
So I no.
Are you sure this is the hill you want to die on?
No.
So please continue.
I do have to go to a break here, but if you need to make this point.
I actually think it's ridiculous, because if we got points for flying for work, why wouldn't we then use the points to travel for when we were still working?
That's not a bad idea.
You know, there's a hell of a lot of points I'd be getting when I'm doing all these flights. Why would we not be then said, well, how many points have you got? Every time you've got 200.
As long as you agree that all of the points when you leave the parliament are given back.
Well, you know what?
As long as you don't take 1 million points I paid for with you, so you and the bloke can go to Disneyland.
Mate, I reckon if they said every 200,000 points you've got to use them to get between Sydney and Canberra the next couple of times, why not? Because everyone else is using their points to travel.
Or make you all go in a bus. That'd be
the old $60 Greyhound bus from Central Station.
Imagine that.
Make me sit next to Chris Bowen or something. And that's
Chris.
Yeah, you don't think we're going to put a camera? You don't think we're going to put a camera and put that on air? It'll be fantastic.
No.
All right, that's a way to get the Australian Parliament House website going. Fire it up. Live coverage of chats to Canberra. All right, quick break. Back with more here on Paul Murray Live. I promise we'll talk about other things in a moment, and including the winner in the week is. Thank you very much for watching, here in conversation with Holly Hughes and the wonderful, amazing, delightful Holly Hughes, who's here. She gets 2 introductions, and Sam Crosby just says hello, pal.
Hello, buddy.
How are you, mate? Now, guess what happens when you just let the market decide?
I know.
Eventually, the market will pick its own winners and losers. And I noticed that the latest car sales for the last month have come out, and they do show that the Ford Range is still up there as number 1, and the D-Max, I think, is at number 2. But guess what's number 3? The Tesla. And the Tesla is only about 1,000 car sales lower than the number 1 position right now. So why are we going through a conversation where we're trying to create a price disincentive for cars number 1 and 2 when obviously sometime this year, maybe next month, the Tesla will be the number 1 sold car in the country? Sam.
Sorry, catch me up. The price differential you're talking about is the fuel standards?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand, for the love of God, I don't understand why you guys are so worked up about this. So Australia and Russia, we're the only 2 advanced countries in the world without these standards.
No one is saying
Chinese cars are currently cleaner than Australian cars. We're asking for Chinese air quality, and you guys are all carrying on like it's a carbon tax.
Mate.
We're just saying, send us the sort of cars that are allowed to be sold in Japan, in China, in the US, in the UK. Send us that quality of car.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The cars that are carved out and are exempt to be used in places like the United States are the ones that will be banned in places like Australia, some of the big sort of yank tank stuff and some of the bigger sizes of utes and SUVs. My issue is, again, you do you, right? You choose you. At the end of the day, Australia is 1% of the world's problem, okay? Because we don't make cars here anymore. We can have that hour-long discussion at some other point in time.
But air quality is not climate. Air quality is the shit you breathe in, right?
100%.
No, but so fuel efficiency standards, we are not against fuel efficiency standards. We are against black out Bowen's his fuel efficiency
Blackout
standard.
Bowen?
Well, I could call him Casanova. That's what he gets called.
Casanova's the best. God love you, Ray
I
Hadley.
managed
That's
to
a great
get that
one.
on Hadley Casanova on Hansard a couple of times. Yeah. I send it through to Ray, so
He'll
he
love it.
knows. But Casanova Bowen, like everything he does, it's ideological, it's too hard, it's too fast, and it's going to have unintended consequences. And he tries to put it all through with NDAs, doesn't want to talk to people who don't agree with him.
The NDA thing kills
the NDAs. NDAs, like it is just... but remember the kind of more transparent government we were going to get. But coming back to fuel efficiency, no one's denying, no one's saying we shouldn't have one. We just shouldn't have what Bowen was proposing. Yes, the market should be deciding. Outrageously, the Corolla Hybrid was going to go up in price because it wasn't meeting the fuel efficiency standard that Chris Bowen wanted.
But they also put a luxury car tax on hybrids.
Yeah.
On
but
a car that would reduce your emissions.
When you go through the cars that are most popular, what is actually climbing and continuing to climb are the hybrids.
Correct.
And the hybrids are a very sensible solution because guess what? No range anxiety. Because you can pop a bit of petrol in if you're going on a longer trip.
Correct. I want to talk about something that I have mentioned a few times, but basically one of the weirdest places to go looking for how do they spend our money, there are two. One, off budget. Clearly, and by its very definition, not a lot of paperwork, right? But a lot of money's off budget, okay? But then in state government, there are, once you put together sort of, events this and destination that, and all of these state-based organisations that pay taxpayer funds, so say in New South Wales, the UFC, a multi-billion-dollar company, was given $16 million so they'd do some shows in Sydney. And the West Australian government is promising to use more taxpayer money to do things like what they did with Coldplay, which was to give multi-millionaire bands a payment to choose that city over any other city, and it has now become baked in. It is baked into almost every major event that someone is helping them choose that location, and it ain't because there's fans that will fill out the stadiums. Now, I have an absolute aggro to this because while the BS version is, everyone turned up and flew there and rented a room. I'll give you the tip about the Coldplay concert. As if 80% of that wasn't full of people in Western Australia who wanted to see Coldplay. Yeah. But there's no accountability. No one pays the money. Nothing happens. It's just money off to people who just say, unless you give it to me, I'm not turning up. Bugger them.
Well, I don't like Coldplay, so I would never have given them a dime anyway. But, I mean, look, you had the Taylor Swift.
Okay, well, in your Slipknot, if that's your preferred. It's a very heavy metal band.
I like she's literally clutching her pearls. This is beautiful.
Here we go. A bit of kabuki.
But do you agree it's dodgy? Do you think it's dodgy?
Look, I think it's very strange, but I think places like Western Australia probably need to bring an incentive because, as you say, no one's flying to Perth for a specific event unless it's something like the America's Cup or going off on Fremantle. But, I mean, if you look at Victoria, they want to pay more taxpayer funds to cancel the games.
That's a very good point.
I don't mind if they pay some money to get something there, but how about it goes ahead?
Yeah.
Because, Victoria paid to get them and then paid to cancel them.
I love that when you go home, you're going to be searching for Slipknot.
No, I'm really not. I promise you. But I'll tell you who will be. Probably my 16-year-old daughter who's going to start bombarding me with YouTube videos.
All right, it'll be fun just hearing the dirge in the back anyway. I look forward to your report back next week. All right, winners and losers of the week. Sam Crosby, who is it for you?
Well, it was both my Tigers and the Tigers were the winners, and I was the loser that turned the game off with, I don't know,
don't ever
10 minutes to go.
Don't you give up on them.
I'm out.
Don't you give up on them.
And so I'm going to say the Tigers again this week over the Dolphins.
What about that top of the table clash? Looking forward to it. See it on Fox Footy, of course. Senator?
Winners and losers. So the biggest losers of the week are the Australian people who are having their institutions undermined day after day by this government, if no more so than by the appointment of Sam Mostyn as Governor-General. A Republican going into this role is an absolute joke. The winner of the week, I'm going to say, are the constituents of Dobell, because I launched their federal candidate for the upcoming federal election this week, Mr. Brendan Small. He's a great local businessman, and the people of Dobell are the winners for having a Liberal candidate in the field, probably 12 months out from the election.
Good stuff. Thank you, guys. Do appreciate it. We went from the rote speech to the... Oh, that's right. Don't forget to mention. Oh, I appreciate that. Did well. And, of course, yes. But the winner of the week was because you opened the campaign.
I launched it.
What about the candidate?
He's great. No,
he's great. That's why they're... Anyway.
And we went to a food bank and we met with some great locals.
Thank you, Rockstar. Enjoy your points. We'll see you soon. Quick break. Back with more here on Paul Murray Live. We're done. Happy WrestleMania weekend. Enjoy both of it. You can see it on Fox 8 on the Foxtel platform. It's also a live channel on the WWE channel on Binge. That's where I'm spending the weekend. In the meantime, go Tigers, go Yankees. And now to the Judgment Day that is the late debate. Rhea Ripley, along with the other two. Here it is.